You are listening to Moments Podcast with me, Shuang Cai. In this show, I am going to talk to artists, academics, industry practitioners, and entrepreneurs from a variety of backgrounds, each of whom is committed to imagining a better tomorrow and working to make it a reality. Some of their experiences are experimental, some are highly practical and ambitious. Most importantly, each dialogue is imaginative, because we want to engage in dialogue with people from all over the world who are curious about life, to enjoy a moment together, to seize the moment, to seize eternity. Join me and these amazing people and their experience life as it's meant to be lived. Hello everyone, welcome to Moments Podcast. It's very nice to be here at the WBS department, right? It's not a department, it's a school.
Warwick Business School.
Yeah, and we've got Jonothan Neelands today with us. Jonathan, yahoo!
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So Professor Jonathan Neelands, if you were about to introduce yourself to our listeners, how would you introduce yourself?
Well, I guess it depends on who the listeners are. I mean, I've spent most of my career in drama and theatre education, as you know, and we're kind of here to talk about drama and theatre education today. But more recently, in the last 7 or 8 years, I suppose, I've been more involved in placemaking and cultural policy and how culture can change people and places and celebrate and give pride, give confidence to people, very closely working with Coventry. So that's been, but I was born to do workshops, not to do cultural policy. So drama and theatre education will always be my heart.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you have been doing this for almost your whole life. Right?
Almost my whole life.
From what kind of age?
Very long time. 22, 23. So,
yeah. Yeah, we have a very good memory. About 10 years ago, I was doing my MA course here in drama and theatre in education, and you were one of the leading lecturers or professors, and gave us so many interesting, workshops. And one of them I remember till now is using the Asian Chinese text, watching the wheat harvest. I don't know whether the translation is correct, but I've been using this workshop back in China for many times, and all the participants was like, how did you kind of manage to design this kind of workshop? And I said to them, it's not designed by me, it's designed by a professor back in Warwick, and they was like genius, marvelous, talented. So my question is, why did you choose a Tang Dynasty poem as a material for drama education, for MA students? And what did you aim to convey through such cross-cultural, interdisciplinary teaching, design, and practice?
Well, it was partly by chance, I suppose. It was during a time when I was going to mainland China quite frequently, and I was looking for, local material and historical material. And I found in an old bookshop a collection of translations of Chinese poems by Arthur Waley, a very famous collection. And the interesting thing about Arthur Waley was that he was doing these translations during the Great Depression in America, and he was a socialist. And his interest in Chinese poems was to do with the socialism in them. And I got the book and I opened it, and watching the Reapers really grabbed my attention, partly because I could see how I could handle it in drama. Sometimes a poem's too poetic or abstract or conceptual, you can't bring it to life, but you certainly can watching the Reapers. And then I also became fascinated by the life of Bai Dewey and the idea that you could be a tax collector and a poet. And without apparently there being a contradiction in that. So in a Western mind, how could somebody be a tax collector and a poet? You know, like they're different worlds, they're different mindsets. But of course, you know, in the Chinese way of thinking, that's about you finding the harmony between being a tax collector and a poet. And I also really like that Bai Jui would write his poems and then he would show them to his servants and he would show them to illiterate workers and he would keep rewriting them until everybody could understand them. And I think that was saying so much, you know, in Western culture, it can often be seen as quite elitist poetry and not reaching the people and not about the people and not speaking directly to them. And here was a, you know, a wonderful, wonderful example. And then there's just something in the poem about the old woman. And again, it relates to Brecht. I know you're going to ask later about Brecht, but you can look at the poem, look at the old woman in the poem, you know, with sympathy, but also, you know, as Brecht said, it's not possible to be both good and poor. So I wanted the poem to slightly turn it on its head by, in the drama, the woman asking Bai Jui to look after the taxpayer, to look after the baby, to adopt the baby. You know, if you got all this money, you can do this and you can do whatever. And of course, you know, he won't and sees her off and everything else. So I just think it's an interesting one that you can turn over and over. But there's lots of physicality in it. You know, the reaping and some dance elements in it, as you remember, and some good, you know, role play teacher and all opportunities as well. So it was a fantastic, lucky find. But for all of those many layered reasons, it was something I wanted to carry on doing.
Have you found any, you know, related topics, you know, Chinese Asian poems, you know, similar to Bai Jui's?
Yeah, well, I've used. I'm trying to remember some time ago now, but I'm trying to the woman poet Li Xiao, same sort of period, same sort of time as Bai Jui, very famous women's poet, and what really impressed me about the women poets of the Tang Dynasty was the poetry's very bleak, very hard, very critical, very feminist. Very feminist for
Is
that.
Is it because of the emperor used to be a woman, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
Wu Zetian used to be the first woman empire in that.
So a lot of the female poetry is very, very feminist, you know, in a really refreshing way. So I mean, always what I'm interested in do is coming back to the West with these things and helping people in the West to understand that there is a, you know, there is a civilization over here that has a 3,000-year continuous history and sees history going forward forever. You know, it's a fantastic thing, and obviously for all kinds of reasons in the West we don't see that. And I think also I was working at the university, so I understood the struggle of Chinese students coming to the university and only being offered Western lenses and Western mindsets for doing their work and understanding it, you know. And if you've been educated in Confucius and the values and dialectical thinking and all of that, it must just be a bit confusing that suddenly it's either this or it's that, or, and if it's, you know, if it's not Aristotle, it doesn't, you know, and no kind of recognition of Oriental thinking, Chinese thinking. So yeah.
But even till now, I think the, you know, humanity courses very much European centered, right? It doesn't change so much, no. And people don't care about, you know, Chinese theater, Japanese theater. No. I don't think people care too much here.
Yeah. And I think people in the West judge China for what it is now and don't understand that long continuity of civilization. So, you know, at one level, society changes. Yeah. But at another, those values, those principles go back thousands and thousands of years and remain unchanged. Whatever the government is, those principles and values remain unchanged. And I think it's, you know, really important for us to understand that because they're very enlightening and they offer us different ways of understanding the world. You know, the whole concept of harmony is so important, you know, particularly if you understand dialectical materialism and understand that there are no binaries, it's not this or that, it's something in between, then, you know, the idea of harmony gives us a better way of working with opposites.
Do you think is it because of people nowadays care too much about Chinese politics rather than the Chinese culture itself?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's right. And but and as I was trying to say, the politics change, but the culture doesn't. No, and it persists. And also, of course, it's the diaspora, isn't it? I mean, I work with Chinese heritage people in Taiwan. I work with Chinese heritage people in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in all kinds of other places. And it's that fascinates me, is how the six the six stories, Lady White Snake and the butterfly lovers, and those stories go with migrant workers over hundreds of years, whether it's to America or wherever else, and used to educate Chinese migrant children into the culture, even though they're thousands of miles away from it. So there's continuity and recognition and unity, across the diaspora, Chinese diaspora, which I find, really interesting. Because I'm Canadian in heritage, so part of the interest in Chinese culture began with looking at the building of the railroads in Canada and the role of the Chinese migrant workers in building the Canadian railways.
There is such a story, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So culture and art is really, another way of understanding our cultures. Renowned educational theatre workshop, The Arrival, which was fascinating itself, right? And it was based on Australian artist picture book, and it's all about immigration, migrant labours, all sorts of topics. And does this also reflect your personal aesthetic philosophy in theatre? Because it's all about, deeply humanistic and highly international themes, within this picture books or text itself.
Yeah, I mean the last time I taught the Arrival workshop was in Beijing last year in July 2024, and I think we found a more poetic, a more kind of poetic and distanced way of looking at it. It's a universal story, isn't it? And again, Chinese people, because of the diaspora, down the fun, deep, they understand the idea of migration, and just asking students there in Beijing, where did your grandparents came from? They all came from the country and they all came into town. And now asking, where are your relatives? And they're in San Francisco and they're in Toronto and they're in Singapore and they're in Sydney and they're all over the place. So it's deeply part of.
Even in Beijing?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, because it was a conference, so they were coming from everywhere. But their relatives have moved to these other places. So it's very deep in the soul of the Chinese people, this notion of migration and movement and change in that way. Yeah. And it's migration to deal directly with migration would be very, very difficult. I mean, that in Europe we have this problem with people coming in on boats, and many of them die and whatever.
And there are horrible protests.
Right? Yeah. But you could do drama that was about, babies drowning and all the rest of it. And then the impact would be an emotional impact, because you're overwhelmed by the content. It's the content, not the drama, it's not the theatre, it's the content. If I show you a picture of a drowned baby, then that's what's affecting you, not the theatre that I put around it. So what I like about The Arrival is it's quite distanced, and it is universal, and it does draw on deep racial memories of the necessity of migration, but also the hope, that migrants, particularly from the Chinese diaspora, they travelled in hope. They travelled in hope that when they came to Singapore, they would make business and they would be able to bring family over, and they would do all of that. So it's a very particular diaspora story that the Chinese have. And the beautiful thing about The Arrival is the pictures are done. Jonothan is half Australian, half Malay Chinese. So the pictures are very clever. Some people look at them and they see Westerners, some people look at them and see Chinese, some look at Malaysian, people will see them in different ways. So it's that universality of it, I think, And what it allows you to do, because it's such a beautiful book, what it allows you to do is to do beautiful work. And for me, that's what's important. The work should have a beauty. And you say humanistic and whatever, yeah, but the beauty comes from that recognition. You know, in my workshop, there's one picture, which is a couple, just as the man is leaving, holding hands over a suitcase. You know, if you work with that, when it's presented, it's extraordinarily beautiful, but it's beautiful because it's a moment of transition, a moment of longing, a moment of departure, a moment of separation between these two people. And if you can capture all of that in a moment of theatre or an image, then it's deeply affecting. But its message is humanitarian. It's not just purely aesthetic. Its message is humanitarian.
Yeah, exactly. I personally experienced theatre's transformative power, and I do believe it. Before. And what do you consider the most crucial mission for an educator, you know, as a theater professor in higher education, and as both an artistic practitioner and an arts educator? Do you see similarities between these roles, or are they inherently contradictory?
We've just talked about harmony, so we can't say that they're inherently contradictory, but there are tensions. There are tensions. I mean, one reason why I teach drama and theatre less often than I maybe once did is because of the way that education across the Western world, in particular, has gone. You know, I mean, you've got strong arts in the Chinese curriculum, particularly in the early years, but there's less and less opportunity because it's become more about. It's, you know, it's content driven and it's performance driven. It's not necessarily as much focused on the development of the self, development of the person, development of the self in relation to the other. I mean, again, that's something that really drew me to Chinese culture, is that, you know, the understanding that I only exist in relation to others. You know, I do not exist on my own. I only exist in relation to others. And for me, that's the fundamental purpose of drama education in particular, is for young people to learn they only exist in relation to others. So, you know, building that sense of ensemble amongst a learning group, but also through all the drama work that you're doing, connect individuals to the world and to people, and to develop empathy. Empathy is the great gift of drama education. You know, it's through drama that we come to understand, to feel for those who are different, those who are not like ourselves, you know, particularly when you're taking ancient Chinese stories and yet you're still making a connection between them and you're still feeling for the people who are involved. But I don't think, you know, you don't get any reward for that in education any longer. So, you know,
All of the world, you mean?
Sorry? Well, I don't know about over the world. I mean, drama and theatre education does still exist. I mean, I'm going in a couple of months to Turkey to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award in Turkey. So who knows? And I think there are still some in Australia, and there's still little pockets of it, but it's not, you know, we've lost
the value of
it. And we've lost 60% of all the drama teachers that used to be in schools. Drama and theatre is not even feasible as a university subject anymore in many universities. You know, we've lost. The effect of 20, 30 years of neoliberalism in the West has been to completely obliterate the importance of the humanities and the arts.
But the interesting stuff is we've noticed that there are still so many Chinese students applying to, you know, Warwick MA drama education courses every year, and still so many students come to that, right? Go for that.
Yeah, well, they do, but it's a big population, right? So, you know, if you get 20 students from China, that's, you know, 20 out of 1.5 billion. Whereas if we get 20 English students, that, you know what I'm saying. I mean, I think that there is because of the size of the population in China, there will always be a big enough market to keep drama and theatre going, both, you know, coming here, but also inviting people to go over and be part of it. You know, last year in Beijing, it was the IDEA International Drama Education Association conference, you know, global conference. Very, very well attended, lots of people there. And I go and do IDEC, the International Drama Education Association. I go and do that conference every year and go and work with them. You know, drama and theatre still exist strongly in the world. There's still youth theatres. There's still, you know, I'm the chair of the board of directors of the Belgrade. We do youthful theatre work. We work with elders. We work with all kinds of people. But it's just within school system, within the formal school system, I think it's very difficult
You mean in like primary school,
Yeah,
high
primary,
school,
secondary
middle
school. But in
school?
the public, I mean, if you go to private schools, you get loads of it. So it's become increasingly, drama, arts education has become increasingly associated with the education of the elites and not with
Exactly.
working children. So they never get each other. And it's not just that they don't therefore get the learning power of drama or the experience of drama. They don't also get the opportunity to learn an instrument, to play a violin, to play a trumpet, play a saxophone, to become a dancer, to train. They don't get any of those opportunities either. So it's a very class stratified, and then that begins to mean that there is a culture for the rich and the wealthy and the educated and a culture for the others, and then we end up with the world in which we find ourselves of reform and populists and right wing and all that stuff.
The good thing is you told me, several weeks ago, and you are currently exploring a series of traditional Chinese stories, such as Mulan, right?
Yeah.
And what draws you to this legendary tale of female hero who took her father's place in military service, a story so deeply ingrained in Chinese culture?
Well, I guess once I began to and learning about Chinese culture and Chinese systems. We're talking 10 years. I maybe first went to mainland in 2014, and I was asked over to work on traditional.
That's your first time.
Yeah.
2014.
To mainland.
Okay.
To work on traditional stories and fables. So that was always, what I was there to do, and my interest. And so I'd been doing that for quite a time when I came to Milan. And what I didn't want the world to only have Disney's version of Mulan. And again, it was the poem, and I think it was Li Xiaopao, I wish I could remember now. But it was a woman poet's telling of the story.
Another version, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, a Chinese woman poet whose version of it is what I use in the classroom. So, and I wanted it to be linked. I wanted to be linked to an exploration of values, so filial piety, propriety, those values and how they come through the story. To make, I know Chinese people, particularly in the diaspora, they use the stories to teach the values, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to make that connection more explicit. It was important, obviously, that it was a strong woman, but also to understand the kind of sacrifices that she made and why she made them, and her reasons for doing what she did. And what would it be like afterwards? How would you go back to being...
To be a female again, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, how would you do that, and what would you do to resist it? So it was the poetry, the story, the wanting to reclaim it from Disney, the connecting it to a longer history of values and principles, Confucian principles. That I wanted to do that, and also it's got battles in it. So with young people, you can. Yeah. Or the problem for drama educator is, how do I have a battle which doesn't result in children hurting each other and damaging? You should do it through dance. That's what you do. So it was a challenge to how you would do that.
So for your workshop, you will continue to develop the story after she came back from the military.
Yeah.
Right? That's interesting, because in the ancient Chinese context, it just stops there after finish the war. All the story just stopped there, but you continue to develop, right? Yeah. What's the reason behind?
Well, I think that's where I'm a Westerner who's fascinated by Chinese culture, history, ways of understanding the world, but I am also a Westerner. So that's the kind of Westerner question, like, well, hang on then, she goes and does all of this, she saves her father's life, she does all of this, and when she comes back, and I play, and in it, we play a mother's not very keen for her to go in the first place, and when she comes back, what she expected to do, because it also, there comes in other stories, doesn't it, where there are strong women, but there's this, so the butterfly lovers, she goes through all of that, but so I just wanted to ask that kind of Western question of, how would you
pretend to be a man,
Well, how do you pretend to be a man, do all of that stuff, come back, get all the emperors, whatever, and then just come home and put on your dress and, get married and be subservient?
In my mind, Mulan, Anyway, she will get married to a man.
Yeah, well, she probably will. But it's the not the contradictions in Confucius. It's but there are tensions, so Confucius can be used to make people obedient and subservient and follow the rules and whatever. But it can also be used to see through that and see things differently. He was, oh yes, it's about order, but it's also about changing the order in order to reflect the values of the time.
So based on what you have talked about, you deeply developed the text like watching the wheat harvest and Mulan. What similarities do you preserve between these stories in the process of interpretation and artistic adaptation? What do you feel losing the most? And what surprises you and discoveries have you most delighted in creating during the whole process?
Well, I think we've been over some of that. I mean, I think it starts from that deep respect for a culture that has had continuous 3,000 years. Talking Tang Dynasty, we're talking about some of the stories from the Tang Dynasty. They're extraordinarily modern when you put them in the context of what was happening in the West at that time.
Yeah.
Way, until a certain point, way more civilized, that Bai Zhui was writing poems, in the Tang Dynasty.
He's a governor, right?
But he hardly, we didn't know how to keep records, let alone write letters and do things.
Right.
So there was all of that. But then there are still modern preoccupations. So we've talked through some of that. I mean, there's something about social justice. There's something about gender politics. There's something about understanding that you are only because you are with others. So that's kind of social, finding social camaraderie and unity and bonding, across history, across the stories, but also within the group, studying those stories, looking at opportunity and who gets the opportunities and who doesn't. So The Butterfly Lovers is a classic of a working class boy and a privileged woman who pretends to be a boy and goes off to the school together, and she has to pretend to be a boy in order to get the education. But what steps does he have to climb up to the school? That whole kind of notion that education is something that you have to ascend, that you have to climb towards. What are the steps that he has to take in order to get an education, and what are the steps she has to take in order to get an education? So those big questions about social justice and fairness and equality.
If you are going to do some teachers training in China, what kind of what sort of stuff do you want to integrate drama education into their classrooms, and particularly those thinking to utilize traditional Chinese culture narratives, and how would you tell them that they should, begin like what kind of techniques or values or?
Well, I'll go and I'll do workshops with them. So it's by experiencing it yourself, you get a better sense of what the young people will experience, and also for you, what will be the challenges of introducing that into your classroom, and then you can raise those and how do we deal with those. So you model practice. You also make it, you're working on several dimensions, and therefore, when you're training, you have to cover these different dimensions. Yes, there's the story and there's the doing of the story, but there's that process is tied to the process of the learning group, the young people becoming what we in the West would call an ensemble. So that we sit in a circle, the teacher tries to take off their crown and be share and distribute power amongst the group. Young people learning that by becoming actors in the story and the actors in the drama, they become better social actors in the world. They have more confidence to make things happen, to make things change. So the social education is as important as what the content is, and it's understanding that. And then what I and others have produced for the world are the drama conventions. So, still image, thought tracking, sound tracking, different techniques that you can use in order to structure the drama. So the teachers have access to all of that, and they can make choices as to what's going to work well when.
There's a very interesting, I don't know what's the word, but it's a kind of phenomena around them. They always seek for more techniques after the teacher's training. I want more. But for me, I'm thinking of, if you can use this 10 techniques in a really good way, you can do it, perfectly. Why do you always want to seek more and more? What would you respond to this kind of,
Well, I think, my collection of conventions, as you know, comes in a book called Structuring Drama Work, which has got about 100 in them. So there's loads of them. But the critics of my approach would say exactly that what teachers are doing are like painting by numbers, and that's the mistake. So the conventions are like the artist's palette, it's the colours which you then use the brush to apply. They're not the painting. And so there's a very huge difference between having the colours, the conventions in your hand, and having the brush and then creating a beautiful picture. And a beautiful picture isn't a beautiful picture because you've used 100 colours. A beautiful picture may be a beautiful picture because you've used 2, 3, and you've made that selection. But people become obsessed by the techniques and the doing of the techniques, and that often means they're not getting enough out of each one. So they need to fill the time. So we'll do a still image. All right, do sound tracking. We'll do this. We'll do that. We'll do that. We'll do that. Because you're not dwelling. The whole purpose of doing drama is to reflect. What are we learning? What are we understanding? What is changing? How do we deepen our engagement with this content?
Probably after trying or practice 50 or 100 techniques, they would finally realize, okay, probably this 10 techniques or this 20 techniques I would use the most during the class, not the rest of them, right?
Yeah, I mean, what you have to be careful about with that is that if you've got the same group of young people, every week, let us say, for a year, then there needs to be some variety. But that also means you're not necessarily always doing process or drama and education. You might be doing other kinds of drama and theatre, So I remember, back in the day, and one reason for writing the Structuring Drama Work and putting more conventions out there is because every drama I was ever in was always a meeting. And that's all we did. Have a committee meeting, have a meeting, or it was just using teacher and role and no other conventions. So sometimes you need more variety, and you need to know what the choices are, I suppose. Then you need to be able to select. So that's maybe what people are not thinking about, is from all of this, which ones do I select for my young people? Because the selection is to do with the content, but it's also to do with the young people. If I choose a convention which is too lively and active for my children, will that mean that I lose control and they all go crazy? If I haven't got any space and I've got very little time, what convention do I use that doesn't need a lot of space and doesn't need a lot of time? So it's always about drama. It's pedagogy. Pedagogy is the most important thing, more important than drama, more important than theatre, is the pedagogy that's associated both with drama and theatre, and not just drama and education, but in another question, the pedagogy of Brecht, the pedagogy of Edward Bond, the pedagogy of other great theatre directors who've
That's why your book is quite popular among the Chinese teachers, because they can always, there's more. There's more. When I see their faces, I was like, okay, happy then.
Yeah, value for money.
Happy
good
then.
Good value.
You transitioned from Faculty of Education to the business school at Warwick. From what time? Which year?
Well, it was over a period. So from about 2000, maybe 2010 to 2012.
Ooh, quite a long time ago, right?
No.
So I wonder, what courses do you teach here?
I don't teach any courses here. We used to. I contribute to one executive MBA module called Leadership and the Art of Judgment, which I teach with Harry Sukas, which is probably the last remaining philosophical, creative humanities-based, experiential in the entire business school. When we first came here, we came to lead a group called WBS Create that was going to put this pedagogy and drama and theatre education across the school.
Right.
And that worked for a short while. But again, the values change. You
Right.
know, the reasons why students come change. They're not going to choose a course unless they can convince their parents it's directly related to accounting or to whatever it is that they're here to do. So, you know, all of those kind of reasons that make it very difficult. And we originally came here because WBS started a business with the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I was very close with the Royal Shakespeare Company and did all the pedagogical work with them. So, you know, ways of teaching Shakespeare through drama education techniques. And also because the director at the time was a man called Michael Boyd, who's an extraordinary man, and he really developed the thinking around ensemble and what it means to be an ensemble and how you do ensemble building. So again, teachers beginning, you know, the beginning, that's why we use games, that's why we use all of those. They're always, again, trust, they're always ways of, you know, building ensemble, building confidence, understanding that it's very easy to spoil, more challenging to contribute and make something happen. So yeah, and then that all went.
So nowadays you mainly focus on research, or
No. From 2013 to 2015, I led the Warwick Commission on the Future of Cultural Value, which is even 10 years later is still very, very influential in the country. It determines government policy on the arts and culture. It determines Arts Council England culture and policy. When I finished that, I came back and Coventry was bidding to be UK City of Culture 2021. So I became part of that project, and that's 5 or 6 years I worked on that. And now the last couple of years I've been working on, because of the City of Culture, working on major events and how to evaluate major events and how do people and places benefit from them. So I've travelled a long way from drama and theatre education. In a way, I kind of retired from that, you know, in 2015 or 2016, particularly in terms of writing papers and the rest of it. However, my training and my principles and my skills that I developed through drama and theatre are still really important in what I do now. So yeah, I'm towards the end of my career, and it's not. I've started going, but you know, I'm, as I said to you, I'm chair of the board of directors at the Belgrade Theatre, so that's nice for me. It's brought me back into theatre at the later stage of my life, which is great. And the Belgrade's a radical theatre where theatre and education was invented at the Belgrade, so you know, there's a long tradition of the work that we've been talking about. But it's and I'm starting again to travel a little bit. I told you I went to Turkey. I might go back to China, so I'm coming back into drama and theatre education a bit now. The field again a bit,
or industry. Or research world. Anyway, interestingly, when I was doing my PhD research, you know, I need to read some articles or books, and one phrase from your book, or maybe article I've got, resonated deeply with me. I should read it to you. You wrote it. From Ibsen to Brecht to Boal, Brooke and Bound, one can trace a phase in the idea that through artistic transformation of the stage, society itself can be changed. Do you still believe in the transformative power of theatre? Probably you have already mentioned that, and that it remains achievable in our current era.
So I wrote a paper some time ago, which is called Miracles Are Happening. And it was around the idea that sometimes in drama classrooms, you know, extraordinary things happen. And a teacher would say, oh, you know, this child never spoken in class, and in a drama class, they couldn't stop them, they're talking.
This happened in the UK?
Oh, yeah. Well, then.
Okay.
There's less of it now.
I thought it would only happen.
Yeah, but again, you see, that's what annoys me. You know, I've been in workshops in China. You know, I've been in workshops with only Chinese students, and I and I come here. Oh, Chinese students never speak. You know, they don't speak. They won't speak out. They won't speak. Oh, they will do. It's just not doing it right.
Takes time, right?
Well, it takes time, and you're
right.
also not. You're not building. I mean, all right, the young people I work with in China, they've come to drama and theatre workshops. It's what they want to do,
Right.
But even so, anyway, the point about miracles happening is saying that if you teach expecting change, then change is not a miracle. It's an everyday thing. So these levels of transformation happen at different levels. Yeah. So the young person who does find their confidence, the young person who does leave the classroom and go and join a society or go and join a club and do something to create real change. And I still believe, that there are theatre and if we include film and we include television as well, there are plays, there are films, there are television series that changed the world. We recently had the post office scandal where many people running post offices, committed suicide. They were wrongly accused of stealing money because the computer system was all wrong, and nothing was happening. They weren't getting any justice at all. And then they put on a play about it, and boom, overnight, people, it's completely wrong. Things will be changed. Okay. So even if it's not big societal changes all in one go. I belong to a tradition of playwrights that in the West goes back to the Greeks, who believed that through theatre it was possible to change the world, both in terms of its messages and contents, but also for young people becoming engaged in theatre, as I've said now on a couple of occasions, learning to be social actors, learning that in the same way that the drama is changeable, so is the world changeable, and learning how you act in the real world through learning how to act in the fictional theatre world is really, really important, I think. I'm not interested in entertainment for its own sake. It's important, and people are entitled to it. At the Belgrade, we put on very deep plays, very meaningful plays, but we also put on Six and commercial entertainment because people have every right just to be entertained. But I'm not interested in mere entertainment. There has to be learning. It has to be the potential for change. There has to be some indicators of how change might happen. So if we go back to Mulan, if we ask the question, what happens when she comes home? That's a question for every young woman in that group, isn't it?
It reminds me of what will happen to Nora after she left home, right? Yeah. It's kind of it's not exactly the same situation, but it resonates sometimes. Yeah. Another quite famous Chinese literature, Lu Xun, she would say she will definitely come back.
That's the woman, that's the poet. I'm trying to remember Lu Xun.
Right.
I do find this frustrating with Chinese people, however. Right. But when I try to speak Chinese, and I'm not very good at it, but when I'm there and when I was going more frequently, I would do a little bit. And if you made the slightest, because it's so tonal, make the slightest mistake and people, I don't know what you're talking about. And then you get one letter. Oh, yes.
Yes.
And yet when Chinese people are in the West, we're expected to try and understand what on earth it is they're saying.
So, very last question. What's your plan, in the next, I should say, 1 or 3 or 5 years? I suppose probably you are going to retire or something?
Surely you're going to retire.
No, I don't think so. You are so powerful and energetic, right?
Yeah, I guess I worry a bit about what I would do if I retired. I don't play golf, I don't go fishing, I don't go hiking.
I don't think you would.
Because drama and theatre was, for me, it was never just a job or, it was, I'd go to theatre, it was my life.
Yeah.
So I never developed any other kind of interests or hobbies, really. I think I'm ready to stop doing the non-drama and theatre. I'm ready to stop the cultural policy work and all of that, and try and find small ways of coming back into drama and theatre education is what I think that I'll probably do.
Well, a brave saying for me. If you retire from Warwick, would you consider any Chinese university to be their professor?
No. I think when I finish being a professor, I'll finish being a professor.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll carry, because you're professor for life, aren't you? But I don't really do very many professory type
Teaching
things.
or,
And anyway, now it's not what I do. I'm more like somebody working in professional services than I'm an academic. And I'm proud of what I do and I'm proud of what we've achieved. But it's not, there's a space in my heart that's forever drama and theatre education.
But I do believe, and I bet some Chinese universities would give you the offer and invitation to be their lecturer.
Well, I'd like to go back. I haven't been. I went back to, I travelled a lot.
Yeah.
Until the pandemic, and then it's never really quite the same after. And of course, China, it took a long, long time to come out of that, and then there was quite a lot of restrictions. So I didn't go back to mainland China until last year. So from 2019 to 2024 was it was like a big gap.
But people still remember you.
Yeah, they do. And, I'm always happy to go back. I'm always happy to go back. And
but not for a long time, just for some workshops or conferences.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, I can't. I don't think. I don't want to be away from family and things like that.
I
so.
see. Nice. Thank you, Jonathan.
It's been a pleasure.
Very happy to talk with you. It's like a reunion, right?
A reunion.
Reunion, right. And thanks for your contribution to our podcast.
My pleasure.
And hope to see you next time.